Officials say that these men and women were involved in trafficking more than 100 pounds of drugs right through the Midlands, even using Columbia Metropolitan Airport. Our Chad Mills is live.
It's an investigation that investigators have been calling cash cow. According to the indictments, the contraband includes pounds of loose cigarette tobacco, cell phones and cell phone accessories, marijuana, alcoholic beverages, and other types of drugs.
Local agencies led to charges and indictments against eight alleged members of the Bloods gang. Want to show you their mugshots. Investigators say these 8 men all conspired to kill, steal, and perform various other crimes dating back.
South Carolina has seen a significant crackdown on organized crime and gang-related violence, with multiple law enforcement agencies conducting extensive investigations into various criminal organizations operating within the state. These gangs, including the Walterboro Cowboys, West Cash Gang, Paid Family, Billy's Possibly Teach 9 Trey Bloods, various blood sets, and Insane Gangster Disciples, have been linked to drug trafficking, firearms offenses, violent crimes, and even international criminal enterprises. Federal and state authorities have launched operations such as Operation Cash Out and Operation Cash Cow to dismantle networks, resulting in numerous arrests, indictments, and convictions. From street-level narcotics distribution and gang rivalries to large-scale racketeering conspiracies, these cases highlight the depth of organized crime in South Carolina. Some gangs used contraband cell phones within the prison system to continue their operations, orchestrating deletions, kidnappings, and drug trafficking beyond prison walls. Others engaged in violent turf wars, retaliatory shootings, and sophisticated financial crimes to sustain their illicit activities. 8 members of the Walterboro-based Cowboys street gang have been sentenced to prison on charges related to attempted deletions and drug trafficking. District Judge David Norton issued the sentences, which include prison time, 3 years of supervised release, and orders to pay the medical expenses of their victims. Among those sentenced, 3 members were convicted for their roles in a 2015 attempted deletion. 1 member was sentenced for his involvement in 3 shootings between 2010 and 2013, while 2 members were convicted in connection to 2 drive-by shootings in 2011 and 2013. 1 member was sentenced for his role in a 2014 shooting, while another member received his sentence for drug distribution. Another member was convicted for his involvement in a 2012 robbery and shooting. These convictions bring the total to 13 out of 14 members of the Cowboys and their allied gang, the Wild Boys, who have been sentenced since a 2016 federal indictment. Authorities described the Cowboys as a Bloods-affiliated gang that operated in Walterboro's East Side neighborhood. They were known for wearing red, white, and blue, often incorporating the American flag into their clothing. The Cowboys and Wild Boys were closely aligned for years, frequently posting threats, firearms, cash, and narcotics on social media.
Tag just heard from officers about the so-called West Cash Gang. Kate, what can you tell us about Operation Cash Out?
Well, Sophia, Carolyn, this has been a 1.5-year-long investigation with 11 organizations involved, from the FBI to the Charleston County Sheriff's Office. Now, the 13 individuals are facing 46 charges, most of those from drug trafficking charges. But the agency said the gang is responsible for some of the most recent shootings we've had here in the Low Country. The Charleston County Sheriff's Office says many of those are in custody now are those who were either on bond, parole, or had ankle monitors on them. Those with the U.S. Attorney's Office tell me a majority of those in the West Cash Gang are from West Ashley. Charleston Police Chief Luther Reynolds says, in general, there is an outside gang influence here in the Low Country.
Acting U.S. Attorney M. Rhett DeHart announced the arrests of 9 individuals in Charleston, South Carolina, as part of Operation Cash Out, a multi-agency investigation into a drug trafficking and firearms conspiracy linked to the West Cash Gang. The operation, involving more than 200 federal, state, and local law enforcement officers, targeted individuals accused of distributing various drugs. 4 defendants have been charged with conspiring to make false statements to licensed firearms dealers to illegally purchase weapons, including an AR-15 pistol, FN 5.7 pistols, and a Glock 29. Prosecutors say the individuals lied to gun dealers, including Palmetto State Armory, ATP Gun Shop, Field & Stream, and Sportsman's Warehouse, falsely claiming they were the actual buyers of the firearms. The indictment also includes 5 charges of using telephones to facilitate drug trafficking. Additional charges include felon in possession of a firearm, possession of a firearm in furtherance of drug trafficking, and possession with intent to distribute drugs.
Drugs, guns, and gang activity. That's what the Attorney General says has landed more than a dozen people behind bars. Officials say that these men and women were involved in trafficking more than 100 pounds of drugs right through the Midlands, even using Columbia Metropolitan Airport.
This is a major drug trafficking conspiracy ring that was busted up.
In an afternoon news conference, AG Alan Wilson announced the indictments of 15 people, many, if not all of them, tied to a gang known as the Paid Family. Officials say the investigation began after a 24-year-old was shot outside a Two Notch Road nightclub last March. The indictments allege that the 15 suspects worked together to bring more than 100 pounds of marijuana to the Midlands through Columbia Airport.
We call them flyers. And so the flyers would fly out to the West Coast, get the drugs, and then bring them back in through the airport.
Now they're facing some serious charges. And
Attorney General Alan Wilson and Richland County Sheriff Leon Lott have announced the indictment of 15 individuals connected to the Paid Family gang, accused of trafficking over 100 pounds of Mary J. into South Carolina. Authorities say the operation funneled large amounts of drugs into Lexington and Richland counties, primarily through Columbia Metropolitan Airport. The individuals indicted by the Grand faced charges of possessing, selling, manufacturing, delivering, purchasing, conspiring, or transporting at least 100 pounds of Mary J. into the state. Attorney General Wilson described the group as an armed gang that engaged in a long-term conspiracy to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars through illegal drug trafficking. A separate indictment charges 3 of the accused with additional offenses, including money laundering and weapons violations. Authorities say some of the suspects used a business, Family Trucking LLC, as a front to disguise illicit drug proceeds. According to the indictment, members conspired to launder drug money through the company, while another member is facing 3 counts of possessing firearms during criminal activities. Sheriff Lott stated that the indictments stem from a broader investigation led by the Richland County Sheriff's Department. The Lexington indictment claims that between May 2014 and March 2017, the 15 defendants were responsible for trafficking Mary J. into Lexington County, with the active duty serviceman Cedric, stationed at Fort Lewis in Washington State, identified as the main supplier.
106 charges against 17 people.
The ability to get contraband in the prisons is limited only by the ingenuity of the inmates and the willingness of people on the outside to help.
Officials say one of the supposed ringleaders of these schemes is Baraka Ramos. They say he helped organize the smuggling of the items in through bakery deliveries. The indictments say inmates working in the food warehouse at Goodman Correctional Institution would sneak boxes of contraband left near a Columbia bakery onto delivery trucks before they returned to prison. Department of Corrections officials say they have already made changes to their protocol. Another supposed ringleader, Anthony Pyatt, was instrumental in organizing the contraband smuggling scheme at the dairy facilities at Walter Reed River Correctional Institution. Indictments show people on the outside would leave duffel bags full of banned items around the dairy and farm facilities, and inmates working at the facility would pick up these bags.
21 more people have been indicted by the grand jury for smuggling contraband into South Carolina prisons. It's an investigation that investigators have been calling cash cow. According to the indictments, the contraband includes pounds of loose cigarette tobacco, cell phones and cell phone accessories, marijuana, alcoholic beverages, and other types of drugs. The Attorney General says there were 4 alleged methods for how this contraband got inside the prisons: throwovers, smuggling through dairy facilities at Walterboro Correctional Institution in Sumter County, smuggling through bread runs to a bakery in Colombia, and smuggling through state house inmate work crews. Attorney General Alan Wilson says the only way these people were able to coordinate all of this was by using cell phones, which were smuggled into the prisons.
South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson announced the indictment of 17 individuals involved in a large-scale prison contraband smuggling operation known as Operation Cash Cow. The scheme, centered around contraband cell phones, enabled inmates to coordinate illegal activities from inside prison walls. Among those charged are 4 inmates, 1 corrections staff member, and 12 individuals outside the prison system. Prosecutors revealed that inmate leaders orchestrated the smuggling and distribution of various illegal items, including cell phones, Mary J., alcohol, and various drugs. The smuggling routes exploited food delivery systems, using a Columbia bakery and a dairy farm to move contraband. One key suspect allegedly helped smuggle illegal items through bakery deliveries, with inmates at Goodman Correctional Institution sneaking packages onto trucks. Another inmate was involved in trafficking contraband through the dairy farm at Watery River Correctional Institution, where duffel bags filled with banned items were left for inmates to retrieve and distribute. The scheme even used a color coding system to organize deliveries. Authorities have since tightened prison security, implementing taller fences, drone detection technology, and body scanners. The South Carolina Department of Corrections has also replaced inmate workers with employees in warehouse and food distribution facilities to prevent further smuggling. However, officials emphasize that contraband cell phones remain the biggest security threat, enabling inmates to coordinate smuggling operations. Attorney General Wilson has called for nationwide cell phone jamming to prevent further illicit activities. The latest round of indictments brings the total number of arrests in Operation Cash Cow to 21, including 8 corrections officers. Officials warn that anyone assisting in these operations risks serious prison time and endangers lives. 13 individuals have been arrested as part of a federal and state joint operation targeting the Billy's Gang, which primarily operates in Myrtle Beach and Florence, South Carolina. The arrests mark a significant disruption to the gang's drug distribution network. The Billy's East Side Bloods, a faction of the United Blood Nations gang, has been heavily involved in trafficking in the region, along with committing numerous firearm-related crimes. Authorities say the gang uses violence, including shootings, to protect its drug operations and maintain control over its territory. Law enforcement officers conducted simultaneous arrests across Florence, Myrtle Beach, and Charleston. The indictment identifies members of the Billy's Gang. Prosecutors allege that the gang, along with its associates, conspired to distribute controlled substances and trafficked firearms to further their drug trade. The indictment states that all 13 defendants knowingly and intentionally conspired to distribute.
Well, all new now on your news at 4. An investigation by several local agencies led to charges and indictments against 8 alleged members of the Bloods gang. I want to show you their mugshots. Investigators say these 8 men all conspired to kill, steal, and perform various other crimes dating back as far as April of 2016.
South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson announced that 8 alleged gang members have been indicted in Richland, Lexington, and Newberry counties on charges including deletion, attempted deletion, burglary, conspiracy, and vehicle theft. The indictments allege that these crimes were carried out as part of a criminal gang operating throughout the Midlands region. Authorities launched the investigation after a series of shootings on April 8, 2016, which were later connected to burglaries at 2 Swansea car dealerships and multiple vehicle thefts across Lexington and Newberry counties. Once local law enforcement agencies identified these connections, they sought assistance from SLED and the Attorney General's office in what became a multi-jurisdictional gang investigation. Among those indicted are alleged Blood gang members who face multiple charges, including conspiracy, burglary, larceny, and vehicle theft related to the March 30, 2016 burglaries at 2 Swansea car dealerships. Authorities say 5 vehicles were stolen in these burglaries, all of which have since been recovered. 3 members also face additional charges for allegedly stealing a Chevrolet Avalanche in Lexington County and a Chevrolet Impala in Newberry County on April 8, 2016. These stolen vehicles were later used in multiple drive-by shootings on the same day. The indictments detail a series of violent incidents that took place on April 8, 2016. The first shooting allegedly occurred at a school bus stop in Lexington County. 3 Blood members attempted to kill a rival gang member in a drive-by shooting. Later that same day, they allegedly committed another random drive-by shooting in Lexington County. That evening, 7 alleged gang members conspired to travel to Columbia's Hammond Village apartment complex to target rival gang members. However, the only person shot was an alleged fellow Blood gang member, who later died from his injuries. Immediately following this fatal shooting, the defendants are alleged to have carried out yet another drive-by shooting in Lexington County.
This afternoon today, a man who investigators say was behind a Charlotte gang civil war entered a plea deal. Willis Lane pled guilty to assault and battery with a high and aggravated nature in the 2018 shooting at the Willow apartment complex. Billie Jean Shaw was in the courtroom as a judge sentenced Lane to more than a decade behind bars.
And this is my first time being in trouble. And I don't want this mistake to penalize and puncture the rest of my future.
Willis Lane begging the judge for mercy just moments after prosecutors painted the 20-year-old as the cold-hearted criminal behind a gang shootout at a Fort Mill apartment complex in 2018.
He fully intended to kill people that night.
Evidence presented in court shows the moment shots were fired at the car Isaiah Kersey and Michaela Moyler were traveling in. Kersey was shot in the face, Moyler in the arm. Both survive. Behind the trigger, investigators say was Willis Lane.
This is something that he planned and researched and tracked these people down.
Prosecutors also presenting materials from Lane's cell phone showing him with a number of firearms, the address to the victim's home, lyrics about shooting people, and text messages bragging about the shooting. Lane was arrested on attempted murder charges, but later entered a plea deal on the charge of assault and battery with high and aggravated nature. Meanwhile, the defense and Lane's family painted him as a wannabe thug who only pretended to be a gangster.
Playing with that lifestyle, he developed.
Lane was sentenced to 12 years in prison, including several months of time served. He'll be nearly 30 years old when released. Enough time, he says, to get his life together.
And I want to further my education in psychology and work with troubled youth so they won't make the same mistakes.
A total of 10 Bloods gang members have been arrested in connection with a shooting near Fort Mill, South Carolina, which authorities describe as part of an internal civil war within the Charlotte-based Bloods gang. The violent confrontation, which occurred on September 19, 2018, near Drewski Lane, left 2 people wounded and a police patrol car struck by gunfire. Law enforcement officials revealed that the individuals involved had moved to Fort Mill to escape ongoing gang violence in Charlotte, but the conflict followed them across the state line. The shootout, which occurred near an apartment complex at the busy intersection of Gold Hill Road and US 21, was reportedly part of retaliatory gang violence. Prosecutors noted that some of the firearms used in the incident were stolen and had been linked to other shootings in Charlotte. A York County Sheriff's deputy, who happened to be driving by at the time, witnessed muzzle flashes and immediately pursued the suspects north on Interstate 77. Following the incident, York County authorities arrested 10 people, including the 2 wounded individuals. Among them was Willis Gus Lane, 19, of Charlotte, whom prosecutors identified as a primary shooter. Lane was charged with 3 counts of attempted deletion and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. A York County judge denied Lane's bond, citing concerns over public safety and flight risk, given that he was a North Carolina resident. In court, prosecutors described how Lane had been arrested in Charlotte just days after the shooting, where he was found in possession of an AK-47 pistol matching shell casings recovered from the crime scene. Surveillance footage and social media posts presented in court further implicated Lane, showing him brandishing weapons and making threats related to the shooting. By 2020, at 20 years old, He pleaded guilty to assault and battery of a high and aggravated nature. He was sentenced to 12 years in a South Carolina prison. Prosecutors explained that while Lane initially faced attempted deletion charges, he was offered a plea deal due to his young age, lack of prior criminal record, and the fact that the victims were fellow gang members whom he felt threatened by. During sentencing, Lane apologized and expressed his desire to reform, stating, "I don't want this mistake to penalize my future. I ask for a chance to right my wrongs." Despite his plea for leniency, the judge emphasized the broader impact of gang violence, calling it poison to the community.
They may have been locked up, but they weren't locked out of their criminal empire. 40 people now charged with running an international crime ring, while some of them were behind bars. They ordered kidnapping and trafficked $150 million worth of throughout the world, all with the help of smuggled cell phones.
They should not be able to carry out their criminal enterprise by having this tool right here that they use as a weapon.
Among those charged are Gaston County residents Virginia Ryle and Lisa Bolton. Investigators say the pair helped kidnap Michelle Dodge back in 2019 and drove her to where she was ultimately killed. A man inside of a jail cell was the one calling the shots. Investigators say the street gang called the Insane Gangster Disciples were behind all of the violence.
A call for change aimed at the FCC following the arrest of 40 prisoners in the largest racketeering case in our state's history. Contraband cell phones are to blame for crimes organized behind bars, at least according to investigators. Alicia Nieves has the plea from state leaders tonight.
A federal grand jury has returned a 147-count superseding indictment against 40 defendants across South Carolina in what officials describe as the largest federal racketeering conspiracy in the state's history. The indictment exposes a violent criminal enterprise that operated within the South Carolina Department of Corrections, where gang leaders used contraband cell phones to orchestrate kidnapping, firearms distribution, and international drug trafficking. The defendants, who were members of the Insane Gangster Disciples, a faction of the Folk Nation gang, were charged under the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Among the 40 defendants, 24 were previously indicted for their roles in the gang's drug operations. Authorities say that IGD leaders inside SCDC directed a sprawling criminal network that extended beyond prison walls, using violence and intimidation to maintain control and eliminate perceived threats. The multi-agency investigation began in July 2017, initially focusing on drug and illegal firearm sales. As the probe expanded, law enforcement uncovered IGD's deep involvement in organized crime, including deletion, arson, armed robbery, extortion, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. Prosecutors allege that gang members ordered retaliatory attacks, including deletions and kidnappings, against individuals suspected of cooperating with law enforcement or owing drug debts. Many of these violent acts were executed by IGD members outside prison under the direction of incarcerated leaders. The case resulted in the prosecution of all 40 defendants, marking a significant victory in the fight against organized crime in South Carolina. The IGD was divided into 3 primary sets, each with its own leadership structure. Authorities highlighted that contraband cell phones played a pivotal role in facilitating gang operations, allowing incarcerated leaders to coordinate deletions, traffic weapons, and expand their drug empire internationally. Since the initial indictment, all 40 defendants have pleaded guilty to charges related to RICO or drug trafficking. 10 of the defendants faced deletions or kidnapping resulting in death and pleaded guilty as charged. The takedown of these gangs represents a significant victory for law enforcement in the ongoing fight against organized crime, gang violence, and drug trafficking in South Carolina. Authorities have dismantled major criminal enterprises, sentencing key members to lengthy prison terms and disrupting the flow of drugs, illegal weapons, and violence in local communities. However, law enforcement officials warn that gang activity remains an ongoing threat, requiring continued multi-agency cooperation, community vigilance, and legislative action to prevent future criminal operations. The success of these operations serves as a clear message to criminal organizations, whether inside prison walls or on the streets. Law enforcement will pursue and prosecute those responsible for violence, drug distribution, and organized crime. Moving forward, authorities remain committed to ensuring the safety and security of South Carolina residents by continuing to identify, investigate, and dismantle violent gangs operating within the state.